For those that have been following us for a while, you know that buy-to-let is dead and the real money is in commercial to residential or HMO projects just like this one here. Now, my name is Malkit Pirwal. I'm from Savoys Properties. We've been in property for 23 years, specializing in commercial, residential, HMOs and other aspects. We now manage 700 tenants in-house. Come inside and we'll show you around our latest project. Now, what do we look for when we're looking at our ideal commercial or residential project? Well, firstly, we actually start off and seeing where the property is actually situated. Is it in a primary, secondary or tertiary parade? If it's a primary or secondary parade, we're more likely to keep a retail unit like this one here. And if you have a look around, it's on the high street and it actually makes sense to actually retain this to provide essential services to the local area, such as maybe convenience stores, hairdressers, nail bars, and to some of these new businesses that are now popping up, such as vape shops and so on. So it is actually important for us to actually maintain a certain element of commercial. However, we do look at changing potentially either the middle or the rear of the building to residential use. One, this provides much needed residential space. Two, we actually make a retail space like this business rates exempt. It actually makes it more appealing to smaller startup businesses. And if you've been watching our YouTube channel, you'll know when it comes to commercial, it's all about zoning. This primary area where we're standing here to that back wall is actually zone A. That bit in the middle is zone B. And then further you go back is zone C and D. And once you hit C and D, the price per square foot is very low. So it actually makes sense changing that to residential use. What's the vision for the site? So, well, we're actually going to maintain this area here as commercial use. We'll put in a WC and a small kitchenette area, which all retail space need for the people that are going to be working from here and for staff members and so on. We're now working with our planners to see what we're going to do with this section here towards the back. I know it's a little bit dark. We may look at incorporating this into residential use. Now, if you follow me through here, you've got like the amenities such as the WC and the kitchenette area. We could actually now bring that into play for a smaller studio flat, around about 37 square meters. You can turn around and you'll see that there's stairs here, but there's stairs also at the rear, but we'll end up converting this into one big residential unit. And we're actually working with our team to see whether this space would actually be better served as an ensuite HMO for working professionals in the area. As you can see with most of these commercial properties with the residential uppers, when you actually get them, they're in not the best state. But this actually works beneficial for us because when you're actually negotiating with an agent, you can go on the fact that the building's a little bit dilapidated, it actually needs some work doing to it. We've done some initial strip back on it. You can see some of the wiring may have been done a little while ago and it all sort of needs updating. And again, this is beneficial for us because if we're going to modify this to a HMO, we need to strip it all back, like rewired, replumbed, all en suite. And this is actually works in our favor. You can see here, this is a single phase connection. When you're looking at commercial and residential buildings, it's important to understand whether you have a single phase or a three-phase connection. If it's a single phase, then you can't go too heavy on electrical appliances such as rads and potentially water heaters and so on. So you need to work with your electrical team on that to ensure you don't overload this. We've seen situations where developers have overloaded a single phase and it's actually burnt the whole thing out and it's very unsafe. So it's very important to work with that. We're quite fortunate on this site. There's actually gas on the uppers. We'll be able to bring in gas central heating, which this building didn't initially have in. And this will also work for us. One, it's more energy efficient, especially when we're paying the bills if it's HMO. Also for the fact of EPCs, I know they removed some of the targets, but now we've got a new government in place. The likelihood is Labour will bring in that minimum C rating for HMOs and other residential units. This basically puts more of a burden on landlords. So if you're at that development stage, you're better off addressing this at this moment. So if you come through to one of the other rooms here, again, you can see we've started the initial strip back on it. It's always good to just sort of strip back just to see what's going on now. When we strip back in here, you can see basically there's a little bit of cracking that's going across. Now we'll probably have a look at that. The likelihood is this wooden lintel that's put in. As you can see, it's moving. So the likelihood is that's not really supporting the weight that's above. We probably need to have that addressed. So work with our structural guy. We'll probably need a concrete lintel that goes in and actually supports the weight above. You can see how the property was actually being used. So if you turn around there, you got these old-fashioned electric heaters in here. Now these are very energy efficient. So this is another reason why you want to modify, redo the property, ensure that we've got gas central heating just to bring the cost of running these uppers down. Now, how do you actually add value to sites like this? So with the uppers, firstly, you need to establish whether it is actually commercial or C3 use. If it's C3 use and it's a commercial, they tend to be ideal to be converted to HMOs because you don't have many people that actually want to live in a family home above a retail unit. However, if you're a working professional, you're catching a train into town or using local buses and so on, these properties are ideal because they're located in town centres, close to local amenities, and for a single person, it's actually one of the best things they actually want. Now, fortunately for us, this is actually in a town centre, so this is actually geared quite really well to be used as a HMO. Now, the way that we'll actually end up creating the most amount of value is having a look around, creating these floor plans, seeing how best we can actually carve it out. You can see this basically room here is actually a very decent size, so this could potentially be converted into 2 ensuite rooms with maybe a small double each, and it's something that actually meets local needs because within this area here, we did some research using portals such as spareroom.co.uk, and you can see there is a big demand for HMO ensuite units in the area, and there's a decent return per square foot for them. So this then motivates us to actually look going down the HMO route. One other benefit of actually converting the uppers here to HMO is you'll probably take a space where you may have been achieving in this area, let's just say £1,200, £1,500 per month. By changing this potentially into a 5 to 6 bed ensuite HMO, you could potentially now change that to somewhere between 3.5 to 5K, depending on the standard of finish, the size of the rooms, and the tenant demand in the areas that you're operating. One of the biggest questions we get asked is, where do you find these sites? Now, commercial sites work a little bit different than residential units because most resi units that you're going to be looking at purchasing, they tend to be on Zoopla, Rightmove as the main sort of portals. However, when it comes to commercial properties, it does vary. Some are on Rightmove commercial, some are on Zoopla commercial, some are on States Gazette. Some you probably find in local auction houses. I've worked with some sites which are only available through local agents, and they don't even advertise these online. They just basically put a board up above the property hoping for local traffic, and that's going to drive that business to them. So you need to work out the areas you're going to invest in. I like to walk or drive my patch, the one I'm looking at, see buildings that are potentially being converted. If they're being converted, I basically have a look at them on the planning portal. You'll find out a lot of information on there, but then you also find out who's previously sold this site. Now, by doing that, you can reach out to these guys and just tell them, look, I'm interested in future sites, give me a shout if that comes up. Also, set up alerts on local agents, national agents for properties that may come in the areas that you're looking for. We also set up these searches on Zoopla, Rightmove, so you have these emails that come in. If I see something on there that I like, I'll basically click on the link and look at the property details. If not, it's just something that I delete, but it's something that you need to do to ensure you don't miss out on these type of sites. Now, something to bear in mind is when you're looking at a typical town, they may have 30,000 homes within that area, but without those 30,000 homes, you probably have potentially maybe up to 1,000 commercial units. So one thing you need to bear in mind is finding an ideal commercial unit is a lot more difficult than finding a residential because there's a lot fewer of these units that are out there. So you need to put that hard work in. You need to constantly be looking, and when something comes up and it ticks all the boxes, you've got to ensure that if the numbers stack up, you snap it up. Now, what do you need to know before purchasing? Well, one of the main things you actually need to look out for is there an Article 4 directive in the area? Article 4 directive not necessarily relates to HMOs, but it also relates to anything potentially planning related. We've seen councils not happy with commercial spaces being converted to residential use and issuing an Article 4 directive. This basically means if you want to change that space to residential, you need to actually apply for full planning permission, which then involves a lot more. There's neighbour consultations and so on, and it could be a lengthy process. At the moment, with prior approval applications, they're typically done within 56 days. If the council does not give you consent within 56 days, then it's deemed consented. So for us, it's an actual valuable tool, but you want to ensure you have those planning rights there. The other thing you want to do is work with a great solicitor, someone that's actually going to look into local searches, ask the right questions to the vendor's solicitor. You want to ensure that you're not close to rivers or you're in a flood risk area, because this is one of the constraints that prior approval will actually look at. The other thing is you want to be working with a great agent. Now, the agent will look at how easy is it to convert this site to what you want to do. So in this case, we're actually looking at providing a retail unit, a studio flat, potentially if we can meet that square meters, and then changing the uppers to a HMO. But to ensure that we can actually do that, you need to be working with someone that knows the area, knows the planning rules, and can work with the timeframes that you have. Finally, you want to be having a great broker. A broker is someone that can make or break your deal. They have the access to lenders that know what you're actually doing, can provide the finance within the timescales that are required. So in a lot of cases, commercial buildings come into auctions. You've got typically 28 days to complete. Now, that is possible if you're working with a great lender. However, if you're not, then you could potentially have your deposit at stake and you could be liable for costs if you don't complete within that time period. Now, if you want to get involved in commercial or residential projects, you need some guidance. We've got the ideal thing for you. We've got a free Savoys community. We are now hit over 700 property investors within 6 weeks of actually launching this. It's completely free. The link is in the description. We hope to see you on there. Feel free to ask your questions, and myself and the team will be looking forward to answering them.